All right, today on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we look at what the defense and specifically a player that is kind of overperforming and turning heads at the moment. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the offense a little as well and give you info on the quarterback competition. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, to take you on this magical mystery tour we call Ole Miss Sports. Today's episode of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is brought to you by Stat Hero. Stat Hero is reshaping the way you play fantasy sports, dozens of house-based games to play daily, no sharks, no funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/lockedon. And of course, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor. Subscribe to the YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications when new videos go up. And of course, upvote the video itself. Now, once we hit 1,000 subscribers on the Ole Miss Locked On Ole Miss YouTube page, we will have a live show for football season featuring Ole Miss legends. That is the plan, and we need to get to 1,000 first, but that is something that we have in the works as well. So, welcome to the show. Occasionally we do not break news on this program. We're not about breaking news. We don't try to break news. It's all about perspectives and commentary on this channel, and that's kind of the lane we're going to stay into. That being said, I heard from a father of somebody that is on the team talking about something, and no, it is not his father. But he said the player that is standing out through the first week of spring practice is Coleman, which means his transition to linebacker is going exceedingly well. And that is something that we have talked about in the past. We're probably 2 or 3 conversations in at this point. But him doing well after the first week of spring practice is a good sign. They practice Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and they're going to come back to a Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday again. Now, they did not have any press conferences and stuff on Saturday after the scrimmage. That's the reason there was no extra. If there are press conferences, we will try to do that. We'll get them cut up and do the effort required. But Coleman at linebacker, his transition from his hand on the ground at TCU, which Gary Patterson, excellent defensive mind. I do not doubt that Kari has the athletic ability to play the position. That's not what I'm doubting. My reasoning comes from the fact that, honestly, 15 years ago, the player was recruited at Ole Miss that had played high school ball with his hand on the ground. They tried to turn him into a linebacker, and it didn't work. And the player ended up lasting only about a year and going home. This is a player that we were all very excited about. So this was my concern when Coleman was transferred to Ole Miss, and the rumors started coming out that, yes, even though he played at TCU with his hand on the ground, he was the Big 12 co-freshman of the year. Actually, we have both of those guys, by the way, in 2020. At Ole Miss, he's going to turn into a linebacker, and they're going to make him a linebacker. Now, I do not know what he did exactly at TCU. He might have had a mixed responsibility that is higher than anything that I think of. You know, Gary Patterson in the 4.25, he kind of made that famous back in the day and turned that into a little bit of a weapon against spread offenses and was ahead of the curve whenever that came in. So Coleman could have been doing stuff without his hand on the ground at TCU. I don't follow enough TCU football to understand. I'm just letting you know that transition can be difficult. I also am letting you know that athletic ability, as Bill Flowers said, kind of trumps everything. If he has the ability to do it, it's probably not that overly difficult to do. And him showing what's going on in the first full pads practice and making an impression, specifically on the father of a player who reached out to tell specifically what was going on. And there's no reason to doubt him. But it is good to see that Kari Coleman is really performing well at linebacker and taking the necessary steps. Because as we told you and we've tweeted out, this team kind of will go as far as Troy Brown and Kari Coleman will take them. If they are special, if they are a special linebacking group, this team has a chance to be really good. Really good. And we'll talk about the offense in the next segment, quarterback competition in the third segment. But defensively, this team has a chance to be really good. Really physical and really set up. Now, we all got burned by Wesley McGriff. So the fact that Chris Partridge has never called defenses before, obviously your mind is going to go back to Wesley McGriff. And I understand that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Until he calls the defense, you kind of have to understand what's going on and see what happens against Troy and see what happens against Georgia Tech and see what happens against Kentucky for this defense to really take off. Because I think this defense has a chance to be really good. Whenever DJ Durkin, specifically, I think he was told to change off of his stuff into the 3-2-6 of Iowa State, the defense really had a personnel match. Easy to recruit to this. Now, Alabama played murder ball, but they had Brian Robinson at 230 pounds, an old-style running back. Most teams do not have that. Alabama, maybe Georgia at this point, sometimes LSU. But even Alabama doesn't have it this year. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a big player for them and a big play player for them, but he's not Brian Robinson. He's not designed to kill you at 3 yards a pop. He is designed for big plays. That's how he makes his bones. To the point where I feel pretty good with this defense against Alabama's offense playing in next November. It's going to come down to our offense versus their defense. This game could be a 20-17 game. Everybody's going to think about everything that can go wrong and look around and it's like, okay, this is going to be a 51-48 game. No. I just don't see that at this point. And we'll talk about the offense, like I said, a little bit later. But the defense has a chance to be pretty good. That's the point. The 20-17, this defense has a chance to be pretty good. And Kari Coleman having a big first week is really encouraging for that. Because like I said, this team will go as far as Troy Brown and Kari Coleman take them. Because if their evaluations were correct, this has a chance to be a really, really good team. I love and I hate those buzzer beaters, but the drama. But oh, the pain when you're on the other side of it. That's what happened several times this tournament. I needed them to miss it, and they made it. So Stat Heroes NCAA single game pick'em pit star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gaming. Take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on players you know best with the gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. Stat Hero gives you the advantage, resulting in their gamers winning 4 times more often. Why? Because Stat Hero eliminates the mystery about who or what you are going up against. So this is what you need to do. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON, all one word, for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon. Use promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon. Promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. So don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Go to the review, give us a 5-star review. You can say whatever you want. You can say Steve is an ignoramus. I do not care. You say whatever you want. Just give us a 5-star review. That'll help others that are trying to find the podcast. Thank you very much for that. And also, don't forget, if you subscribe to the YouTube page, we get to 1,000 subscribers by football season. Live post-game show with Ole Miss Legends. That right there is going to be pretty cool. So, I told you again. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Now, we talked in the first segment about the player that was standing out defensively, and they reached out to me. You won't find that really anywhere else. They literally reached out directly to us. So, what about the offense? What about the offense? Everybody's talking about what is the offense going to look like? Well, it's going to look the same. It's Lane's offense. We told you how this works on defense and on offense. There is a base thing of how they function that is head coach driven. It doesn't matter who the coordinator is, but it's going to be head coach driven what type of defense and what type of offense we run. It's period. It's in the cards. It is what it is. So Charlie Weiss Jr. does not bring an overhaul to the offense. I will say it again. Charlie Weiss Jr. does not bring an overhaul to the offense. If you think it does, it's because you hope it does. Period. There's no basis in fact whatsoever, and the evidence has been shown Charlie Weiss running his offense at FAU in 2019, 2018, after Kendall Briles took over in 2017, and the offense looked pretty similar. So just understand, it's not going to change. And this only being a weekend to spring practice, this is all about installs. In 2005, we'll just use that year as an example, the offense had 7 install days. So 7 practices that they were installing what they do there, which means they would go into their team meetings and go over what they're going to do that day. So they do all the chalkboard stuff. They go out to the practice field, run through it to make sure we know what's going on, and then you practice actually doing it at full speed. And hopefully by the end of the day, that is entered your mind, and you can move on with your day. That is what the offense is doing now. And that experience probably has Luke Altmyer as a leader at this point. Now, he's not the probability leader going into it. Everybody knows that they would not have brought Jaxson Dart in for him to watch. Everybody knows that. But I am going to talk about this under realistic conditions. And I will talk in the last segment about both quarterbacks and why I'm going to talk about them in certain ways. Because there are routes. There's a pathway for Luke Altmyer to win this job. There is. If you say there isn't, you don't know what you're talking about. Period. There's absolutely a pathway. And that pathway is doing everything at a really high level. He needs to be the Drew Brees of the quarterback competition. If you have Drew Brees and Brett Favre in the same thing, you need to be the machine. You need to be the one that can be counted on. You need to be steady. You need to be able to do whatever you need to do, because the other side, they're going to risk the ball. And Lane Kiffin hates turnovers. So the path is there for Luke Altmyer to win this job. There just is. Now, one's a Gatorade National Player of the Year. Big time, unbelievable statistics. Actually played at USC last year as a starter. Threw for, I think, over 400 yards in his first ever start. He's a big-time player. I'm not saying Luke Altmyer is going to win the job. What I'm saying is that Luke Altmyer can win the job. There's a pathway for him to win the job. That's what I'm saying. Now, we're going to talk about that in the third segment and everything that's going on and everything. But Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley, that is probably the main story of this offense right now, because this offense is going to be set up to run the ball and utilize the heck out of them. If you want to think of those backs, take Snoop Connor and Jerry and Ely and make one back, and now you have 2 of them. Now, Ulysses Bentley is not the big bruiser, powerful running back, but he plays like it at times. He's a tough physical guy. Zach Evans, Adrian Peterson type back, period. If he can stay healthy, he has a chance to run for 1,700 yards this year. Just absolutely, period. This offense will be run-based. especially in the early parts of the season, because the quarterback is going to need to get healthy, or it's going to, and not healthy, needs to get in rhythm, and everything is going on. And to do that, you're going to lean on the running game early on. You're not going to go out and ask Jaxson Dart to throw the ball 60 times against Troy. You're going to go out and ask Jaxson Dart to throw it 25, and you're going to run the ball 50. That's how this first game is going to start. It's going to be 65-70% run pass. And as the season goes on and more confidence is given to the quarterbacks and you're confident in the quarterbacks, all of a sudden the play calling is going to change a little bit. We got big tight ends. There's a whole lot of stuff that we can do really well, and it should be interesting to attack, honestly. Jalen Knox didn't really make an impact in his first practice. Apparently, Braylon Brown did, and he has remade his body, and he looks like a big dude. And I told you, he was a guy that if his graduation year was any other year than 2020, he'd have had a chance to be a 5-star. But the fact that camps got closed down and everything got shut down in 2020 was at his detriment. The only 40 he got to run was on that South Florida mud in South Florida, and that's always going to make them fast risers at the end as opposed to early risers. So be wary of that and know that. But Braylon Brown apparently had a very good first week, but they've only had 1 day in pads. Remember that. Helmets and pads, two different things. And 1 day in pads, it's going to change. It's going to continue to build off each other. Players are going to start to string together performances. And by week 3, we'll have an idea where we are. Week 2, we probably will not. But if you turned into the practice or whatever, and let me know what's going on, thank you very much for that. I'll try to get info out where I can. But like I said, we're not in the business of breaking stories. We don't care where stories are broken. We talk about commentary and we talk about perspectives and of the things that surround Ole Miss athletics. So should be a lot of fun. This is the time of year when I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. This year I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious and new flavors that are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It'll be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off every single time. So here's the offer. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, all one word, to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once we hit 1,000, we will have a live pregame show following Ole Miss football games this fall. I think we're going to make it there easily. We might make it there in a couple of months, honestly. But 1,000 is the number. We wanted to set the goal achievable, and we want it to be able to possibly do it if we could. So do that for us, and thank you very much for that. Now, the quarterback competition between Jaxson Dart and Luke Altmyer. And to be honest, not much has happened. But there's two things going on. And we talked about the pathway for Luke Altmyer to win the job, which it exists. It's real. That it's not likely, but it's real. Jaxson Dart probably is a 60% probability to win the job right now. Luke Altmyer and Jaxson Dart are two different quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart, big, strong, athletic guy with a gunslinger mentality. To beat that, you have Luke Altmyer using his experience in the system to become a little bit of a machine, to become the guy, to become the Drew Brees. So in essence, you have a Drew Brees versus Brett Favre type situation. And the way you beat Brett Favre is to let him beat himself. Turnovers, throwing the ball in. Lane Kiffin is extremely risk averse on turnovers. And I know you don't believe that because of what happened at Arkansas and what happened at LSU. And I think that's more of an indictment on what was behind him than him actually himself. I was a huge John Rice Plumlee fan, but if Jaxson Dart wins the job, his backup quarterback of Luke Altmyer will be better than that 2020 version of that. So he's going to have a little bit less patience when you turn the ball over. And part of that was they were surprised by the scheme against Arkansas, and they're surprised about the athleticism against LSU. That's what happened. Although they should not wear powder blues against LSU, period. So I believe that the path for Luke Altmyer to win the job, again, I'm not rooting for anybody. I'm just talking about options, realistic options. And Jaxson Dart, like I said, 60% chance of winning the job. But if he tries to make every throw and force the ball into coverage, and because this is an and situation, Luke Altmyer turns into a little bit of the machine, then Luke Altmyer has a path to move forward. That's all I'm saying. And the first week of spring practice, the experience of Luke Altmyer within the system and the way they do what they do has paid off. Because from what I have heard, that gap of the experience gap has not really shrunk. And the goal is for Luke Altmyer, maintain that gap through spring practice and get to fall. That's the goal. If that shrinks at all, your margin for error to win the job gets a little smaller as well. It's not rocket science. It's not anything like that. It's a chance to play in the SEC at the highest level of college football. To do that, we run a relatively simple offense, which means it's going to be easier for Jaxson Dart to pick up, which means it's going to be harder for Luke Altmyer to hold him off. But there's a path. And until Labor Day, when they announce the starter, because it's going to be Labor Day, heck, and Lane Kiffin in his opening press conference talked about a 3-man quarterback competition. Nobody thinks Kincaid Dent has an opportunity. Nobody. But he talked about it, and because of that, that's what it is. As little information as can be put out, and as much disinformation as can be put out, they're going to do it. They're going to use the media that way to disguise what they're going to do with their offense. Ole Miss last year changed their whole defense. The whole thing. Schematically, the whole 9 yards. Had open practices in the fall. And because of either some combination of not knowing what you're seeing and not knowing what questions to ask, the media had no idea until the Louisville game that the defense changed. Complete surprise. So I expect them to use the media the same way in this quarterback competition. I do not think anything is going to happen other than Jaxson Dart is going to be the guy. But there is a path. And that path involves turnovers and gunslinger mentality. It's a realistic path. But the flip side of that is Luke Altmyer has to be really, really good. That's all I'm saying about that. All right. Thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Tomorrow we will talk to Derek Vandegrift about the weekend that was in Ole Miss baseball. That was kind of a demolition by the Tennessee Vols, honestly. Now make the second listen Locked On NFL Draft with Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker. Bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Hope everybody enjoys it. Hope everything goes pretty well, but I will see you tomorrow. Howdy toddy.